Good afternoon. We'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting of the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority for Monday, October 28th. And first item on our agenda is to take a look at the financials for September. And Joe, we received the financials and your comments about the income statements. Would you like to add anything or explain anything about the income statements?
Well, actually, Joe and I had talked about this, and
Sure.
Joe came in October.
Great.
I think this will be the last time that Free and I speak about this one driving the show, and after this, it'll be Joe, if that's acceptable.
Okay, quite acceptable.
So, Joe, feel free to help me out anywhere through here. So, on the September 2019 balance sheet, also feel free to jump in here if there's anything. Under the current assets, you can see the current assets there at $2.8 million, $2.87 million. Fixed assets, total net assets at $87.6 million. Total assets decreased during the period. You can see liabilities. We paid down a substantial amount of liabilities. You can see we decreased that by $415,000 round numbers. Current liabilities are down to $4.98 million. Other liabilities in there, you can continue to see we reduced some mortgage debt during the period, and total liabilities at $36.4 million, bringing the total capital net assets to $55 million, with total liabilities and net assets at $91.4 million round numbers. Any questions or comments on the balance sheet?
Well, this may be something that could be covered and under discussion of the court, but the decrease in accounts payable, I assume that the bulk of that had to do with the adjustments on the OML.
Yes, it did. We took, trying to think of the best way to state this, August versus September. August looked worse than it actually was because we took all the expense and recognized it in August, and we took corresponding reversals in September. Just a timing issue, because when we squared up with OMLC and Auburn McCrane, and everybody was on September 6th. But we recognized the expense in August, we recognized the benefit in September, and that's what you see here.
When we get to the discussion of the court, I wonder whether we could go over that transaction, because it's one of these things that confuses me.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
I'd like to understand it better. Any other questions on the balance sheet? No? Oh, good.
Under the income statement, there's a couple different items there that are of note. On the bridge side, we had revenues continued their upward increased by 1.89%. That was due to the toll increase that was effective back in April of this year. There was an unfavorable variance in other direct expenses that you see there, and that's attributable to a new computer set up for an account clerk and semi-annual groundwater sampling analysis. That was on the bridge side of things. On the industrial park, a couple items of note there. We're continuing to sort out the credits associated with the solar farm to make sure everything is in the right bucket, as we talked about last time. We're not there yet. The utilities bill is currently showing a credit of $23,400. And we're in the process of adapting a procedure for the industrial park tenants and working with the solar farm to straighten that out. At the airport, SkyWest continues to be strong even with the schedule change. That started up, as you know, in May. As of June, there's several new billing charges for the GSE, for the rental, for SkyWest Central Air Service apron charges, terminal charges, and office rent. Other direct expense increase due to airport ARF training in the month of September. And the last key item under the Port of Ogdensburg activity was up significantly due to the salt ship for 153,000 round numbers.
Can you go back now? Where's the training expense come under?
That shows under the airport income statement.
Other direct expenses?
Yes. And that's we sent, how many did we send for training?
We sent
Two
for the full training, yes.
for the full training. Under the port side of things, the ship, as I mentioned, the OMLC accounts, we trued up a bunch of things in August. That had the effect of overstating expense in August and giving us a credit in September. We can go over that as well. At the highest level for the consolidated income statement, back on page 2, for operating revenues for the period, we had $362,000 of operating revenue. We had expense with the credits in there at $77,000 round numbers, operating profit of $285,000. And then you can see everything else through there. You can also see in the right columns our fiscal year-to-date operating profit of $1,145,000. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Wait on the page that's labeled income statement, Port of Ogdensburg. I'm sorry, on the one labeled for the bridge.
Yes.
Down at the bottom under non-operating interest expenditure, year-to-date, it's substantial difference between the budget and the actual. And I wonder what would lie under that?
Non-operating interest expense, the line that is, that one that's prior year actual 1494?
I'm looking over at the right-hand columns where it says fiscal year-to-date.
Oh, you're
budget,
looking under the year-to-date?
And then the fiscal year-to-date actual.
I do not know, but we can look into that.
This is the line, Thompson's Trust line of credit. So it could be varies from year to year.
Sure.
Last year we have more expense than this year because we are reducing the expense. Mostly it is under the movie terminal expense. And it is the Thompson Trust. We have one $40,000 mortgage interest, one is this, and then we split up. We have one mortgage, then we split up into term loan and the line of credit.
Mm-hmm.
So everything goes to the interest expense. And mortgage, term loan, and line of credit. This is the 3-line item for the consolidated income statement. And we have like other expense like MAPCO, airport terminal, and the bridge, we have like a key bank lease for the bridge to e-transit lease. So everything goes to the interest expense.
Mm-hmm.
So year to date, last year maybe we have a little bit less, and it varies. The line of credit especially. We'll change the interest rate expense, like sometime they varies on a daily basis, whatever they have. They give us every month, they send us the statement and we record it according to their statement. Towards the end of the year, it should our interest expense should tie in whatever the statement, banks provided us, the interest expense. So these are the actual number.
Mhm.
We haven't accrued anything yet. So use these based on the 5 major interest expense. Could be less, could be almost like the ballpark, but could be less or could be more. Basically, is 5 major.
And I might guess that the budget number for the fiscal year for that particular expense item
Right,
might not, it might have been established before the border station was dissolved and the border expenses started getting reported here.
yes, it is like after we, last year, some point, we split up the term loan and line of credit loan. It could affect the interest expense too.
Sure.
So, and plus we have interest expense also include the finance charge, like the interest expense for anything like bank service fees or normal expense. But those are the minor expenses, not like I'm not considering as a high expense, but the 5 are the major ones.
So just a question,
Go to it.
just a question on the profit loss on the income statement. So we're still behind budget, if I read that correctly, right?
Which one? Consolidated?
Consolidated.
And this time, I think I will say is a huge credit, and this is, I'm seeing like one month expense for the OMLC, Augsburg Marketing and Logistic expense. This school is showing a less profit, everything is like 1 month expense, 1 month is a credit. It's a little bit wacky, but yeah, we look up the year-to-date, it's all set, it's all fine. And we look up the, if you look up the year-to-date expense, it doesn't much have, and we look up the as of August and September expense, we review with the different angles, like are we missing anything? So, but it seems like if the expense was over budgeted last month and we have credit in this September. But the net effect is all under our, should be.
Keep in mind also that this is September that we're looking at here. We did have one salt ship that slipped in October as well. So that'll be a large chunk of revenue for us at the marine terminal port.
But my understanding of your question is that it's about the year-to-date numbers.
It's the year-to-date numbers, and we're off the budget by a lot.
Yeah, we're below budget by
I'm
about
just trying to,
$300,000 on projected
yeah.
cash flow.
Yes, when you tie it right back, it comes right to the marine terminal when you look up the list.
Well, it'll be, I think it must be very hard to budget on a month-by-month basis with the marine terminal. Those are big numbers and they,
Especially annually, you do your budget and you don't know what you're gonna get.
yes,
And so things pop in and things fall out.
yeah,
So it's kind of it's a moving target, but
yeah.
you're right. And then when those actually hit, it can be all over the place.
That's not the whole story though too, because just eyeballing it here real quick, it looks like this, the airport's off 50,000, big picture versus budget year to date as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that as we're getting into the budget season, Joe, I was thinking about issues that are of concern to me as we do accounting and have these finance committee meetings. And I think that the budget preparation must be both challenging, but it is, I think, a profoundly important process for the authority. And I don't think that you can project with precision what's going to happen. But I wonder whether as you make these assumptions, so many salt chips and so forth, whether you could figure out a way to communicate it to the board. That the volume or the revenue projected is based on such and such. And it'll help us understand as we go on through the year when there are deviations from what we projected in the budget.
Well, I worked with OMLC last week. I think, Joe, did you get something from Adam? We'll toward the budget. And that's a preliminary thing to get it out as fast as we can. So we kind of worked on exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember all the details on that, but I think a lot of that would be pretty self-explanatory in the summary that you got, right? Yep.
Well, it's very much a challenge for a board member to understand the complexity of this sort of stuff. But if you folks working together could try to summarize, or give us the one paragraph
Mhm.
info about what your assumptions are, so that we can appreciate that.
And we could
I
probably.
think we can do better than that too. I'd like to bring Adam in like we did last year in executive session and we'll talk about those things.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think he can give you a better feel of the confidence we have in each thing. And you
Mhm.
kind of have a, some of those might feel really good, and the others we can say, well, they're out there.
Yeah.
And he can put them in terms that, for me anyway, I understand.
Sure.
So maybe that,
That
you're
was
probably
really
better
helpful
than I
last
am,
year.
but.
Well, you're probably inside the information, and
No.
you understand it. At any rate, I think this is a very important period for the next 3 months or so. And that the better we understand the budget when it arrives, the happier I'm gonna be. I have been involved with this. I think this might be the third budget I've looked at. And it was a mystery to me. It was my faith in Wade and in you folks that let me vote aye. Because I didn't understand always, or have the capacity to make independent judgments, and I'd like to.
Mhm. Sounds good.
Any other
That's a good
questions?
summary.
Do we have anything else on financials at this stage? Next is, on this agenda is the accounting performance improvement update.
We continue to test things relative to internal controls, specifically on the, you've seen the various requests that have gone out previously. Accounting continues to work through those requests. For the most part, the certificate of insurances are becoming up to date. They aren't there yet for the industrial park and the airport. That's particularly important because at the airport, we were very weak on that side of things when you look at the overall checklist associated with that. And coincidentally, there was a hangar of about 10 aircraft that burned to the ground at one of the airports. And I'll send you the link on that as well, but it just goes to show, while these things never happen, occasionally you need to make sure that you're dotting your i's and crossing your t's, because they were slugging it out in the legal realm of who was responsible for what in that news article I ran across. So for the most part, there's still some things outstanding relative to that. Once that information is in, I'd like to sit back down with the accounting department and also the finance committee, just go over the entire list again and start revisiting some of these things, just make sure that in the absence of having a dedicated internal control officer, that we're discussing these things on a regular basis. In addition, for the accounting performance improvement plan, we located the checklist of when things are due at the authority, due to the state. We're looking at that, and Joe has got the spreadsheet and is starting to get familiar with that. Most of the things on there we know about. There's some things that are coming about that we're not familiar with that we're getting on the list as well.
Sounds good. Any other business before we go to?
There's one other such matters that came in, and that's regarding the vending machine request for proposal at the airport. We submitted a request for proposals for vending services at the airport, primarily being that we didn't want to have it switch out during the busy time of year in the future. We looked at it and said, okay, it would make sense to do this for 2.5-year term, that we don't have to continually switch machines in and out. We had interest by several parties. We had a proposal by one, and the proposal we received was A.W. Collins, that took the commission percentage from 10% up to 13% at the airport, utilizing similar machines to what they have today. Based on that, staff's recommending approval of that RFP, for that proposal by A.W. Collins.
Sounds good. Does that require some action by this committee or?
Just to move it to the board.
I'll move that resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Do we need to call the individuals, Anne Marie, or?
No, that's fine. Motion carries to move to the full board.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there is a need for, there's no other such matters, no additional other such matters. However, there is a need for executive session to review the financial, bear with me here just a minute,
Certainly.
financial history of the corporation. Yes. Can't locate it here on my phone, but I believe that is the correct reason. Is it not, Anne Marie?
Yes, that is one, yeah.
Thank you.
I move we go in executive session, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anne Marie, that's section 105F.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
That's
whoa.
what I couldn't remember.